everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we are in my studio. Yes, finally a studio. If you have been following me along, you're probably bored of watching just my hands in the camera, and me too actually. That's why I decided to finally do a studio in my house. So yeah, welcome to my studio. Today we are working on a resin tray. If you've been following me along on Instagram, you've probably seen this, and you've probably also seen that we're renovating our bathroom. So I'm going to be sharing stuff from our bathroom soon too. So stay tuned for those videos. But yeah, today we're doing the resin tray. Let's get started.
Okay, real quick before we start this video. SD card tweaked out and deleted more than half my footage for this DIY. So I'm going to do the best I can with whatever footage I have left to put this video together. Hopefully it's still clearly understandable. I wish I had pictures or footage of all the supplies I used before starting this project, but that was some of the footage that got deleted. I will go ahead and list all the products I used on my website. If you want, you could go check that out. I'll go ahead and add a link down below. First, we cut our wood in half. Doing this indoors was probably not a good idea, but that's why I love my Ryobi vacuum so much and this cute little helper that comes with it. Okay, I used a flathead screwdriver and a hammer to remove all the bark on both sides of the wood. These edges will actually be on the inside of the tray. Next, I decided to stain my wood. I used a mix of special walnut and dark walnut from the Minwax brand. Honestly, I'm not sure if I should have done this later because I ended up having to touch up the stain after sanding. I should probably also mention this project was kind of make it work as we went. I did not expect to sand it, that's why I stained it at this point. To pour my resin, I needed to build a mold. I used a recycled piece of MDF and applied clear tape over the whole area that the resin would come in contact with. Resin does not stick to tape, which is pretty cool. I chose to go with MDF wood because it's a pretty smooth and solid surface. Anything smooth and solid will work for this. I also got 2 scrap pieces of wood for the sides of the mold. Make sure you apply tape on them as well. Next, I positioned the wood, making sure it was even and marked all 4 corners with a marker. We applied silicone on the bottom along the inner edge. This helps keep the resin from getting soaked on the bottom. It pretty much creates like a barrier. Make sure you remove any globs of silicone that bulge out. Avoid getting any silicone on the areas you want your resin to stick to. Now we attach the 2 scrap pieces of wood on both ends with silicone as well. I cleaned it up as much as I could, and this is how it looked before I let it set overnight, and then the next day we started pouring. Okay, I know there's a lot of resin to pick from. I chose to go with this resin because it's cheaper and it fits my budget. It comes with liquid A and liquid B. You will need to combine equal amounts of these liquids. Make sure your resin isn't cold before you start stirring it together. If it is cold, warm it up in a hot water bath for about 5 minutes. To combine your liquids, I know they sell measuring cups specifically for this, but I go through them so fast and they're pretty spendy. I like to use little plastic shot glasses from the dollar store and just plain big plastic cups without markings on it for mixing. To do this, I will usually just fill the same amount of cups of liquid B and liquid A and then add it into my mixing cup. Oh my gosh, I just realized that I added it into a measuring cup. Oops. I guess I'm just used to doing it this way anyway. Okay, for the first layer of resin, I combine only a total of 1 small shot glass of liquid A and 1 small shot glass of liquid B together. If you've watched my previous videos about resin, you're probably sick of me talking about how important it is to stir your resin for a total of 3 minutes. If you don't stir them well or combine them well enough, your resin will not set properly. Also, make sure you're not whisking to avoid building up bubbles. Gently stir, scraping the sides and the bottom. For my first step with resin, I decided to coat the live edges of my board on the inside first. I simply used a brush and coated all the rough edges. Now you will need to let it set until it gets tacky before filling the whole center with resin. It'll take about 3 to 5 hours to get tacky. This step is to help keep all the dirt from floating up once you pour your resin to fill it. It's totally optional, and in my case, I probably didn't need to do this since there was no bark, but I figured better safe than sorry. I didn't want anything floating around in my milky resin. Okay, It's been about 3 hours. The resin is pretty tacky at this point, and I'm ready to mix another batch of resin. This next batch will be to fill the whole center of the tray, which means I'll need way more this time. I went ahead and did a total of about 1.5 cups. That's the two liquids combined. I stirred it for a total of 3 minutes and added some resin tint. I got this white tint at Hobby Lobby. You can also add acrylic paints, glitter, pigment powder. Just be sure to stick to the 90% resin and 10% paint ratio and stir it well. If too much colorant is added or you don't combine the colors well, your resin might not set properly. Next, I made sure the surface was perfectly level on all 4 sides and filled the center full with white resin. After about 5 minutes, I used a blowtorch to pop any bubbles that came up to the top. Hold it at least 3 inches away and move continuously. Please be super careful as this can be fire hazardous. Take all precautions. I'm not a pro at this. This is simply my experience with this project.
We ran into a little hiccup and I wanted to share it with you. This is our first time working with this resin. I've never worked with it before, but we had a little bit of an issue when it was setting. We either overheated the resin and the center or the whole patch in the middle started setting too quick and the edges weren't setting fast enough, so we're getting like this little wavy bump. So it started setting all chunky kind of, and I think it's because we either overheated it with our torch, and I'm not sure you're allowed to heat all resin, and this one doesn't say in the instructions that you can heat it with the torch to pop bubbles, or it was because we heated it and then we put this lid and the lid was too low, so all the heat didn't have a chance to evaporate and it just kind of cooked the resin and it started hardening too quick. But it's actually not supposed to be all bumpy like this. It's just supposed to slowly over the first 24 hours get solid and be like however you poured it, and if you have it level, that's how it's supposed to dry. So I guess this is all fixable, right, hun?
Yes.
It's all fixable, so we're gonna sand it anyway because you guys can pour it level, but we pour it a little bit more just so we can sand it and get a perfectly smooth surface. I guess we'll sand it now.
Well, we gotta try to peel it off first.
Yeah, so hopefully that's not a fail.
Removing the wood pieces was pretty easy, however the silicone was a little stronger than I had expected and it was harder to remove off the NBF board. It still came off with a metal spatula that we used to pry it, however for the next time, note to self, use cheap silicone. It'll most likely be weaker than the silicone we used. Okay, now we needed to remove all the silicone at the bottom. I'm thinking next time I try something like this, I'll probably try doing it without the silicone on the bottom if the wood is smooth enough, because this added quite a bit more work. After removing the silicone, we sanded down the resin so it would be flush with the wood surface. I started with a 40 grit sandpaper and worked my way up to a 240 grit. We had to do this on both top and bottom of the board. I honestly wish I would have just poured the top flush with the wood surface and not overflowing a bit, because I ended up pouring a clear layer of resin over it anyway, so it would have evened out any imperfections, but you know, I didn't plan ahead. Oh well, it is what it is at this point. There's just so many things I would have done different, but I hope this helps you get some basic knowledge of what not to do when making yours. Okay, because I had to sand the resin flush with the wood, I ended up removing some of the wood stain. I touched it up around the edges with a paintbrush and filled in the rest that needed restaining. Be careful because the white actually does get stained with the wood stain pretty quickly. I feel like this project couldn't help but work backwards for me. Okay, next we applied some tape to the bottom of the board to collect all the drips. Then I mixed up another batch of resin and made sure my surface was level before pouring the clear resin over the board. I used about 4 ounces of resin in total for this. My board measures about 13 by 16 inches if you're wondering. This wasn't planned, but I decided to pour clear resin over the top because the box indicated that it was safe for food contact once cured. So I figured in case I ever wanted to use it as a cheese tray, this would come in handy. After 24 hours, the resin was set and I could remove the tape on the bottom. This easily got rid of all the drips that were collected from the resin setting. I love this trick. Okay, so I'm at Home Depot checking out some handles because I want handles for the tray, and I found these super cute golden brass handles. I really like these. And then they also have these vintage looking ones. I kind of like these too. I don't know. They also have silver ones in this option. Okay, I ended up going with the gold handles for my tray to install them. I first marked the center of my board, then I marked the center of the handles. Next, I applied the tape to see how far away from the edge I wanted the handles to sit. Now, I needed to mark where I wanted them on the board. I lined the center mark on the handle and the center mark on the board. This is where I marked my board for the holes. Wow, I hope that makes sense. I drilled the holes and secured the handles with the screws provided. And that's it. I love how cute this turned out. You can use it as a serving tray or cheese tray, or maybe you could take some ideas from this project to transform it into a big piece of artwork. It's also super cool. You can make the center any color, maybe upsize this DIY for a side table or a coffee table and add some legs to it. Okay, that's all for today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already for more DIYs. I will see you all next time. Bye!